Hello. Hello, everybody. The angle is kind of weird here with that light. I wonder if I shut the curtains. I think that's what I need to do. Give me just momento. Just for a little while. I'll be back. Ooh, yeah, that's better. That's way better. Okay. Hello and welcome to the first 30 seconds of my live where I rearrange my room, because I got to say, I wasn't planning on being in here today, which is also why the bed looks like that. But we're not worried about that because I never make my bed. Like until I get in it and then I make it on top of myself. That's my version of making the bed. It's like crunches, or when your breakfast is crunchy, it's kind of like that, kind of that equation. Yeah, I wasn't planning to be in here, but I have my dad's dog, Bobby, and Bobby is a ray of sunshine, an absolute pleasure. But he's like 4 or 5 months old, so he's a high energy and he's a blue healer, so even more energy. And he is staying with me for a few days so that he can just get some quality time. His dad works a lot, my dad. My brother Bobby is staying with me. Yeah, that's been really interesting. And he was not settled. He was not settled enough for me to leave him out. So he's in his kennel and he cries when he's in there. So I came in here. So hopefully he'll settle down and just go to sleep. But yeah, you guys get to see inside my bedroom where I did not plan to be. Today's live stream. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about the sun entering Taurus and the sun. Hello, Shay. Good morning, or wherever you are. Where are you located, Shay, or at least what time zone? Like what time is it where you are? You seem to catch these every time. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. So yeah, we'll track the sun as it goes through Taurus. It's going to meet up with the North Node and Uranus that are already in Taurus. That'll be in May, but we're going to go ahead and talk about it today just because it kind of organized itself well. We're also going to talk today about Mercury in the sign of Taurus, which it is already there, and it is making conjunctions with Uranus and the North Node also. So we'll also touch into those themes. Stella is picking her spot of the most comfy spot, and that is extremely Taurus in nature. Taurus is very simple, very earthy, very comfy. So all of that considered, like today's episode, I'm so excited to kind of move through it at a really slow, luxurious, enjoying what we're doing kind of pace. Like to even just stop and take a second, like, why are we even doing this? And my answer is so simple: because I enjoy it. So Taurus, especially, it reminds us it's that place where we slow down and smell the roses, literally, because they smell good. And what else is the point if not to enjoy the pleasures of the life that we're living? A lot of times, like people who maybe they feel like they're not living as pleasurable a life as they wish they were, that enhancing your Taurus energy is a great place to work within. That's not good. Hello. It's a great place to work within yourself. So this conversation will basically enhance the pleasure that you're having in your experience if you're engaging with your Taurus energy. And you'll see what that means as we go. But kind of the overarching theme of the sun in Taurus, which will be from April 21st through May 20th, is to let ourselves see kind of whatever rises to the top naturally. What do you want to plant and grow? So expect that the answer to that question is probably really simple. So what do you want to plant and grow? More inner peace, more enjoyment in my every single day, moment to moment experience, more presence where It's not just about having the relationship, but exploring the full depth of what's there within the relationship, because we're slowing down to really explore the depth of the present moment that we're in. And Taurus is engaging us into a deeper and deeper and deeper presence, which is to say, a deeper and deeper and deeper enjoyment of our current reality. So you can see where we can very quickly get all kinds of excited about Taurus energy. And that is all what we're going to talk about today. That's okay. Is it better? It's probably rubbing on my turtleneck, which I put on because I was cold out there, and now in here it's warm. So, you know, I just kind of move with it. I think as long as that doesn't touch, it should be okay. Because I hate that when the audio is not good. I have very strong Taurus. I wonder if I could put it like here. Yeah, how about that? That's probably pretty good. Very strong Taurus energy. I personally am a Taurus rising, 0 degrees, and a Taurus Jupiter at I think 23 degrees, thereabouts, 23 or 24. And so I'm like the princess in the pea. I'm like the queen of this chicken is not the right texture, therefore I will not be able to eat it. You know, little things that seem little, except they're not. They're unacceptable deviations from what I personally enjoy. It's like a very strict set of standards around here is what I prefer. Here's like what I want to maximize my own enjoyment. And anything that isn't that, there's kind of a willingness to just wait for what is that. I'd rather not eat the bouncy chicken and just be hungry and eat something later that is satisfying. I'll wait. I don't settle for poor quality things. I wait for the high quality option to be there. So again, it's like, how much enjoyment do you have in your life? It's like, well, how often are you settling for the inferior option instead of waiting for what you truly want? So that's just like a teensy little bit. I wonder, what the heck? Maybe. That's definitely what happens. I could hold it, which would definitely mute one of my hands' ability to do what they do. Okay, I think we'll see how that goes. I think probably when I move around a lot too, it's like real crazy. So while the sun is in Taurus, as we said, that's going to make conjunctions with Uranus in the North Node, and we're going to get into like what exactly all of that entails. But suffice to say that our patterns are coming to the surface. Taurus is a very consistent, repetitive energy. So once it finds what it's comfortable with, it tends to repeat that over and over and over again. So Taurus, the sun in Taurus, is helping to bring those patterns to the surface where we can see them, illuminate them, so to speak, the sun shining on them. And Uranus and the North Node are both dedicated to helping us to make any changes that are necessary to get us on our higher path. And because Taurus is so comfort zone oriented, it doesn't really want to make a whole lot of changes. It wants to find what works and then just do that over and over and over again, copy and paste for the rest of time. Thank you. So making changes, right? Like the sun conjuncting Uranus and North Node, that is a bringer of change. Mercury conjuncting Uranus and the North Node, that is a bringer of change. And Taurus in general, just like not super excited about that. Like that's just not the same thing as finding what's comfortable and just repeating it over and over again to maximize your own comfort. So these changes that are coming to the surface, I think the bottom line that I want to say about all of that change that could be being revealed to you over the next like month or so, especially with the eclipses that we have at the end of April and then the beginning of May, that all of these changes that are being revealed, that they get to happen in your time. Mostly. That's like true. If you're leaning in the direction of the changes that you want to make, willingly want to make, these are changes that are for your own soul's highest good. So it's like knowing that the change is ultimately for the good. So stepping outside your comfort zone may not be the best when all of this energy is in Taurus, but doing so is ultimately aiming to like increase your overall pleasure in this life. So those changes are good, and you get to be the marshal of them unfolding. It's when we drag our feet and refuse to even acknowledge that any evolution needs to happen or any changes need to happen. You're like, nope, I'm good and I'm right here and I'm never changing and this is what's working for me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, like that kind of shit. And then when you drag your heels, that's when the universe comes along and like gives you a little shove over the cliff, like you get fired, or your partner gives you divorce papers, or some other kind of like forceful, it's no longer on your timetable. And that's how Taurus changes a lot of times can happen. And so Taurus doesn't really like change, but it's like if you would even just lean in the direction of those changes, like how can I 1% today lean in the direction of this, what I want to become or what I want to evolve into? It's not that Taurus doesn't change. It's just, it's slow. It takes time. So every day, how can I 1% lean more in this direction? A little bit more, all of that. In the last few weeks, we have talked heavily and repeatedly about Pisces energy, which in its highest frequency represents the final stage of the healing journey where we transcend the suffering of what we experienced. We now have the lesson, the expansion of what that suffering was. We get to keep the gift of what we got out of it and release the pain of what the path was that got us to where we are now. So it's that release stage, the letting go stage, the acceptance of what is, the surrender to universal will. The universal well-being is dominant, surrendering to that fact and trusting it. All of that is wrapped up in Pisces. And now today we're going to talk heavily about Taurus. And there is a relationship between Pisces and Taurus that most often when you have planets in Pisces and Taurus in your chart, they're going to make a sextile, depending on how, if one is at the beginning of the Pisces sign and the other one's at the end of Taurus, they're not really in range to make that sextile. But if they're in range of each other, that's the relationship that gets made, is that sextile. And that I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about, even though it's like lately one of the things where when my mind wanders, it goes to thinking about the sextile between Pisces and Taurus. Just a little glimpse into my world. But what was I going to say? I do go into it in detail, talking about how sextiles and trines are different, and specifically the sextile between Pisces and Taurus. Go into that at least a little bit in a new video that will be released on the channel on Monday. And that will be a look ahead at kind of the energetics of this upcoming week. And so it doesn't really get into like the archetypes of specific pieces, more looking at like, how do all of this connect? How does like all like the net result of all of this shit going on? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? What are the overarching themes that might touch you in the week? That sounds really intimate, but you know what I mean, metaphorically. So look for that on Monday morning. That's super fun. Just, I don't know if I'm going to do it every single week. I have loose plans to maybe possibly that's going to happen. But we'll see what unfolds. The episode that I made yesterday that'll come out on Monday, it was too fun not to make. So it was just undeniable that it had to be made. It basically made itself. So that'll be there on Monday. Let me look and see. Chiron in Taurus, 12th house. I'm the princess in the P2. I have nearly lost my physical life several times, for real. Like, that's kind of the range of frequencies of Taurus, I think, can be brought back to this idea of embodiment and like are you in your body, or are you like hating on or neglecting or like otherwise just kind of like dragging your body around with you, and really you just live in your head? And it's really interesting. So this is going to sound maybe a little jarring. It did to me. And then I was like, that was like a whole introspective moment of like, why is that so like jarring to me? But anyways, so I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about a good, easy way to know, are you in your body or not? Is right now, is your butthole clenched or is it relaxed? If it's like, if you're checking it, which I have checked it multiple times every day since I heard that. And I'm noticing even just days later of like really bringing my awareness down and like relaxing that base of my being, that as I'm checking it repetitively, it is becoming more relaxed, which is just like, that's amazing. That awareness of, are you in your body or is your body basically on the defensive? Which is what happens when you leave your body has to like fend for itself with its primal instincts, versus when you're fully embodied, there's an inner peace that comes like from your heart, from your mind. It drops down into like the bottom of your being, the base of who you are. It's not stuff. It's like that peace isn't something that you remember. It's not something that you think you know. It's something that you feel in your bones, in every ounce of who you are. So embodiment. And our body, like when we disconnect from our body, it starts to die. And when we come back into our body, it's more aligned with life, with death, and that's where our vitality is. And so like, I think there are a lot of people, especially in the rat race, and I know this was me when I worked at the software company, where like I go to work all day and I come home and I'm exhausted. So I sat at my chair all day and then I come home, and especially the first year of living that lifestyle, I would come home and like lay on the couch. And then all weekend I would like lay in my bed and binge Netflix. And I still do a good lot of that now, but that was like all I did was sit in the chair and lay on the couch, sit in the chair, lay on the couch, and let my mind be doing the things on the computer or watching the series on Netflix or whatever it is. So like all of that is in your head. So like for that whole year, I basically just was dragging my body wherever I went. It was an annoyance. It was like more of a hassle than it was benefit. And it's like when we get disconnected from our body, that the life force is not there and physical illness can move in. So when we have our life force like pulled down into the base of our being, that we're full of ourselves, physical illness doesn't come in. So it's like, it also blew my mind, that same podcast episode, which I'm pretty sure that's the one on the prep playlist that is, it's like Divine Feminine Embodiment. It's a Sahara Rose podcast episode that I thought fit really well with Taurus, since we're talking about it. That's where I got the butthole thing. And it, oh, what was I going to say? Embodiment. The word butthole got me. Like it was a whole moment where I had to like take a step back and be like, why does the word butthole, like, why is that any different than like any other word? It's like the conditioning around the word butthole when I said it out loud, it was like, don't say that. It's inappropriate. It's shameful. Like it was all of this that was like, no, that's wrong. That's no, we shouldn't be. And then I'm like, whoa, what is that resistance? Like that was really interesting, because it was conditioning that was just automatic, that is taboo. That is not a thing that we talk about. And I realized like, I don't know how many times in my life I've used the word butthole in a story talking to somebody else, but I can tell you I can count them on one hand, most likely. Like it's just not spoken about. So like even that was like a mind-opening experience. But on that same podcast, she talks about how the body itself is able to heal itself, and that nothing outside of the body can ever heal the body. So like going to a healer or going to a doctor, even like they can help treat symptoms, they can help identify the root cause. Maybe they act as a reflective mirror in that instance to like help you find what is it in there that basically physical illness is manifested out of a block of energy, that there's a block in the flow of who you are, and around that block basically like physical illness just festers. And so it's like the healer, the person outside of you, they are an invitation. They are maybe a skill set, or they give you a tool or something like that, like a breathing technique, for example, that you learn from a healer that you can then take into your body and do the breathing technique and get the healing benefits from it. But to heal, to actually be able to heal ourselves, it happens from inside of our body. So even though like the healing, regeneration, recovery, like that's the water family, the water signs and energy is responsible for like healing our soul. But to really do that and actually like have it happen to us physically, you have to be in your body. You have to bring your life force down into your body. And this, when I very first heard it, was from my life coach about, are you in your body? Get in your body. And I'm like, how the fuck am I not in my body? Come on. Like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm in here. And then no, like, no. Are you walking with presence? Are you like living from inside, like the base of your stomach? Or are you living from inside your mind? And those are two very different things. And especially for me, with like a ton of energy in Gemini, which is an air sign, very much associated with the mind, the intellect, I definitely have a tendency to live from inside my brain rather than inside my body. And so there's a video on my channel about um, ideas for ways to get in your body, different things that I've experimented with as a way of connecting and kind of like putting the thinking brain on pause and allowing my beingness to fully inhabit my entire self. Um, so we'll put that in the description box of this video. And if Maddie can throw it in the comments when she gets a second, that would be amazing. So yeah, Taurus, embodiment, breath, sound, movement, touch. Those are the best healers, the most powerful healers you will ever have. Basically the only healers that you will have: breath, sound, movement, touch. She does a whole thing, which I absolutely loved because I love to sing and I know that it relaxes me, and I've never understood why or whatever, needed to know why. I don't care. It does. It's a fact that when I sing, especially a song I feel like singing, you know, like especially the Taurus in me, I can put things on repeat for a really long time. Like I've had the same song on repeat for like 2 weeks. Like every time I listen to music, I listen to the same song on a loop and I'll sing it over and over and over again. And like, even when I'm not listening to it, it's still in my mind and I'm still singing it because that song is like the physical metaphor for where my vibration is right now. And singing that song feels like singing my vibration. And she talks about how there's your vagus nerve, which runs down like the front side of your body, all the way from like the top of your head, all the way down to like basically where your butthole is. And so it connects your entire being, and singing causes that vagus nerve to relax. And so that's basically allowing like your whole self to relax. And when we're relaxed, we receive. When we're tensed, we defend. And so we push away every good thing that's coming to us, versus when we can relax, we can allow those good things to naturally come in their own time, which they always are. So again, it's how enjoyable is your life on a daily basis. Another thing that she suggested in that that podcast episode that I had personally never heard of is the concept of fasting, but with your phone. So doing a phone fast 1 day a week, or even like one evening a week or something, like some little chunk of time that you saying, I am focusing in my present moment this entire time. And it's a practice, right? Like, it's not like you need to give up your cell phone and never touch it again. It's like, can you go 2 hours and just turn it off? Turn it off and put it somewhere where you can't see it. No, well, I'll leave it on vibrate just in case it's an emergency. No, be ungettable. Be plugged into your inner self, not allow the outer world to get to you. And again, that's just a way of like allowing your beingness to more come out of your head and into your body, because you're not so distracted mentally. by the phone, the notifications and everything else. Yeah, that podcast episode was freaking amazing. I found it because Reverend Brianna Lynn is the guest on that podcast episode. I had never heard of the Sahara Rose YouTube channel before, but Reverend Brianna Lynn is on a ton of episodes on the Deja Blue podcast, which I've mentioned several times. And so because I've watched every single one of those, YouTube is like, oh, here's this other thing with Brianna Lynn. Maybe you want to watch that. And it was like 2 hours of just like jam fucking packed. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like just opening and expanding and blah, blah, blah. She says in there that she has like a ton of planets in Sagittarius, and that's exactly what she does. I'm surprised that she's as good a listener as she is, to be honest with you, but she really can like listen to what the other person says. And then when she opens her mouth, it is just wisdom. It just, I really resonate with it, you know, like maybe you don't always resonate with like somebody who like, you know, see, I can't even help myself but like get into my phone. So I'm really going to try that phone fast at least one day, and see what happens. Another podcast episode that I put on the prep playlist that I really enjoyed this week as it relates to this Taurus energy is called Unshakable Inner Peace. And that one is on the Sounds True YouTube channel. I believe their podcast is called Insights at the Edge, and Unshakable Inner Peace. And I I was like, wow, they're talking about Taurus without one that's like a very practical application version of like, what does it actually mean to cultivate inner peace, which as far as the zodiac is concerned is ruled by Taurus. I also wanted to mention, so Maddie has been doing an amazing job putting these summaries onto my blog on owningauthenticity.com. And we are going through, like on a weekly basis, we're going through a lot of the same energy. So like Pisces, for example, we've talked about it like 3 weeks in a row. Now Taurus, we've talked about it a couple times lately. So she put on the blog uh, uh, like a Taurus overview where I try to mix it up every single time and present new information on every archetype that we cover. So it's not just a bunch of repeat, but that overview of Taurus is going to like act as kind of a receptacle to take today's overview few pieces and last time's overview few pieces and next time's overview few pieces. So those will be living documents that will, as my research deepens, we will continue to add and add and add to that. So there's a lot over there on the Taurus archetype blog post already that we're not going to go through because I've tried to select some new pieces, keep it interesting. All my Gemini, like, you know, can't do the repeat thing, which is hilarious because I heard on on a YouTube video this morning that Gemini is basically a walking contradiction, that they just collect contradictions and they love it. And that is, they're self-contradicting, because I just got done saying that I can repeat the same song on a loop for 2 weeks. And now I'm like, oh no repetition, can't handle it. You see, this is like a live demo of what Gemini energy is really all about. Which energy is a little slower to listen to? See, and I feel like in my mind, I'm going 100 miles an hour, but I think that's that like Taurus rising where at the, like what ends up coming out of my mouth, Taurus actually rules the throat, by the way. So it's very much associated with the voice. And that's where doing my podcast, I figured out how to sing before I start talking in order to relax my vocal cords. And then, I mean, the energy and the words, they just seem to flow. So that all made perfect sense. But yeah, I think the Taurus rising piece plus my Mercury and Venus are also in the second house. Like all of that definitely grounds what I'm saying into, I really do want to make a coherent string of thought out loud. I really, really, really do. Even if the inside and all that Gemini shit is just a whirling dervish of cyclone. Like it's pretty out of control in here, but I'm glad it comes out calm on the outside. That's really good to hear. Taurus is associated with the second house, Venus. Taurus is the exaltation of the moon, meaning that the moon performs best in Taurus if it can't be in its home sign of Cancer. And like we said, it also rules the neck. the sister sign of Taurus. I love sister signs. If you guys have been around, you know that I can contemplate sister signs like I can contemplate the Taurus Pisces sextile. It just keeps coming back to me. Taurus Scorpio, especially because that's where the nodes are right now. That's where the North Node is transiting Taurus, the South Node is transiting Scorpio. They moved into those signs January of 2022, and they'll be there through July of 2023. And that is significant because that is basically like our collective future unfolding right before our eyes, like North Node moving through, are real changes coming that are intent on like the Earth's highest path. Like, how exciting does that sound? On the other end of that, Scorpio, the South Node is moving through Scorpio. And this axis, I personally, I don't, maybe other people have interpreted it like this. I feel it this way, as far as like this axis of Taurus and Scorpio to me feels like the power axis. And it's like two different ways of having power, because Taurus is definitely physical power, being an earth sign. Scorpio is emotional power, like the stamina to withstand really uncomfortable, difficult things. You know, like somebody who says last month, and then my husband passed away last week, and I'm just really worried because I don't know how I'm going to like provide for my kids or whatever. Like, it's that like emotional stamina. Why are you not a basket case right now? Like, why are you not just a puddle of emotions on the floor? They're holding it together with like all that Scorpio stamina for emotional difficulty. So that power is that emotional stamina. The Taurus end is the physical stamina. And like all of that is fascinating to me. In the Book of Water, I think, maybe he does this in the Book of Earth as well. I think he might, where he talks about Taurus and Scorpio, Stephen Forrest. He describes wisdom foot, peace foot. So he paints this picture, like this old Zen master's walking down a path, and he puts his left foot forward, and that's his wisdom foot. And then he puts his right foot, he like stabilizes on his left foot and then swings the right foot forward. And like, that's the act of walking, is that it's not just, I mean, I suppose you could like hop down the path on your left foot, like wisdom, like, but it's pretty unsteady. It's pretty wobbly. It's not very sustainable. It takes way more energy than you probably have to make it over a really long distance, versus if you use both your feet, there's a recovery for each of them. And it's an expansion of wisdom and then a rest, and an expansion of wisdom and then a rest, and an expansion of wisdom and then a rest. So if you have, for example, a shit ton of planets in Scorpio, you came here in this life, or the eighth house, I would say, you came here in this life to get your wisdom foot forward. You're big time. And what does that mean? That means that you're going to have some difficulties. That means that you're going to manifest some things that hurt. And in that pain, you learn that pain is temporary. You learn how to compartmentalize pain. You learn how to deal with pain and still move forward. So those experiences, like, not super fun, right? Like, getting our wisdom foot forward is usually traumatic. And that's why, like, if you have a ton of planets in Taurus, you came here in this lifetime to get your peace foot forward. You came here to like legit relax and feel better, like do your peace thing. You already got your wisdom foot forward big time in a past lifetime. If you have very little energy in your eighth house and Scorpio, and you have a ton in Taurus or the second house, you have already in past lifetimes expanded your wisdom exponentially. And that's not necessarily what you're here to do this time. Is you're more here to focus on that inner peace side. So that's kind of how those two sister signs work together. Wisdom foot, peace foot, where Taurus is more the self-sufficiency side of things, and Scorpio is where we merge with others. Cat, you want to come inside? Yes, yes, Lola. There you go. She said thank you. Okay, so the next thing, and this one came from one of the podcast episodes as well, the Unshakable Inner Peace. The guest was Shannon Kaiser, and she said, we can't know peace if we don't know the opposite. And that to me is wisdom foot, peace foot. It's like you have to know chaos and dysfunction and suffering if you're going to know inner peace. So no matter where you are on that path of knowing inner peace for yourself, if you feel like you're cultivating it and most days are pretty good, like great, well on your way. If you're still mostly on the suffering side where life is harder than you wish it was, it's not as enjoyable as you wish it was, all of that, just know that in order for us to even know inner peace, we have to know the opposite. So the fact that you know the opposite, the fact that you know suffering and dysfunction and chaos and all of those things means that you are now ready to know inner peace. And this sun transit through Taurus, thank you, Miss Maddie. The sun transit through Taurus is a great 30 days to experiment with this within yourself, because naturally we will lean towards our own inner peace while the sun is in Taurus. It will just be natural. It'll feel good. It'll be easier than it normally is. So let that happen. Let yourself explore and basically discover, if you can, your own sensuality, turn on, and love of self. That like these things are natural. Our five senses are governed by Taurus or kind of ruled by Taurus, associated with Taurus. And well-being is our natural state. So like our body knows well-being, like it's its own natural birthright to know well-being and know that vibration. We can also take our shoes off and put our feet on the planet, and we can know it even stronger within ourselves. But we can come back to that well-being anytime. And when we get here, when we're born, some of us have energy. Basically, everybody has a Scorpio room in your house. If you in us somewhere, some people have it as their foyer, you know, where when you walk in, that's what you see is just Scorpio. Or like a lot of Scorpio or Scorpio rising or Scorpio midheaven, like that, they got Scorpio at the foyer and that's what they're greeting their guests with. Other people have Scorpio as like a tiny little room in the attic that I maybe go into once a year. You know, like it really just depends on who you are. But depending on how heavy your Scorpio energy is, you have to manifest some emotionally difficult things. You just have to. And when that happens, we get pulled out of our natural well-being. That's the whole point of the physical, the tension, I guess. Like I was listening to the thing this morning where they were talking about Aries energy, and they talked about like, how do you start fire? Like Aries energy is cardinal fire. It's the first fire sign, the first zodiac sign. It's the beginning, the life force, the spark. How do you spark a fire? You have to have friction. You have to have like the desire plus the resistance. And it's in the desire plus the resistance that the spark happens. And that's how the fire can catch, is through that resistance. And Scorpio works a lot like that, is like, how is emotional stamina built? It's built by experiencing emotionally difficult things. And every time one of those things comes up in our world, it's like our well-being just kind of gets covered over another layer. It's like, well, now I know that bad thing can happen, so I better protect this. And now I know this bad thing can happen, so that's another layer of protection. And now there's this other thing that can happen, and that's another layer of protection. Scorpio is the scorpion. It's represented by the scorpion, which has a hard shell, the stinger. It's a very defensive, self-protective energy. So when emotionally difficult things happen, we get protective of ourselves. And basically it comes back to like, is your butthole clenched or is it relaxed? And Scorpio they're like all clenched and protected and on alert, on high alert. And it is impossible to be like that in that Scorpio energy and be in your Taurus inner peace at the same time. You can't have your well-being covered over and protected from the light of day. Like the well-being has to be open and rise to the surface and come out where you can actually feel it. And that means letting go of the self-protective instincts that Scorpio wants us to hang on to. So all of that is, you know, it's a dynamic, it's a spectrum that we are all on in some capacity. And I think at one end is inner peace, and at the other end is total suffering. And that is wisdom foot, peace foot, like, and I think all of us, we have both. We all have a Taurus side, even if you have all your planets ever in Scorpio, like you still have Taurus in your chart. There is still a possibility that you can take a deep breath and like rise up out of the emotions that you're feeling, like, and ground yourself back into that moment. You can, do the butthole check and release it, like relax into that moment, let your body know that it's safe. That's like one of the things that, like, I've definitely, this sounds weird, but like as a hobby, studied trauma and how to heal trauma. I find it very fascinating. And one of the things that you hear a lot is that, like, if you're going to practice getting in your body, that, and you like had historically like body trauma, like a sexual assault of survivor or like physical assault survivor, whatever, like you've had that trauma on your body, sink your consciousness down into your body, there is a potential to trigger that trauma that's still in there from the previous event and basically re-traumatize yourself. And so I don't take that lightly, because basically the bottom line of that is, if that's you, if you've had like that body trauma in the past, most likely you want to work with a coach or a guide of some sort that's there to help facilitate not only the coming into your body and like some techniques and practices for how to prep yourself and how to feel safe, and like what can you do in your environment, your surroundings, to help you feel safe in that moment, but also to deal with anything that might come up, like re-traumatizing yourself because you have this thing that you've locked away in your body, and like, I'm just not going to go there, and like, we're just going to not go to that part of the body because that's where I store my trauma. And then you try to get down in your body, and all of a sudden that comes like rushing out with the full force of the original pain. And that's no joke. So I do put that in there because there are coaches and guides and therapists and lots of different trauma practitioners, different styles, and all different kinds of therapies out there. Um, Actually, I have also on my channel, on the playlist tab, there is a playlist called, I think it's Contemplating Trauma or Trauma Contemplations or something like that, where anytime I see a video or a resource that is really super helpful as far as like understanding how trauma works and what it means in your body and your nervous system and all of that, I tag it onto that playlist. So if you guys ever want to check that out, feel free. Then there's also the video. Maddie, will you grab the video for, thank you so much for telling me about the mic. I really appreciate that. Maddie, will you grab the video? It's like way back on the channel, like the 4 ideas for getting in your body video that I did. Like, it's one of the tidbits for inspiration covers. But yeah, so I was going to talk about those in this, but I think to save time, I'll point you towards that video if you feel called to investigate. But just remember, like, getting in your body: breath, movement, sound, touch. Breath, movement, sound, touch. So singing, especially if you sing and like put your hands like on your heart and your stomach, and then sing, and all of a sudden, like, your vibration is creating this loop, and like the longer you do it, the more well-being you're generating inside of your own vessel. And that made so much sense because I also recently binged the Scandal series, which as I watched it, I realized I hadn't even seen like the last half of the series. And so like there's a point where they have a baby and it's fussing, and the older guy is teaching the younger guy like how to hum, but not just hum, like hum from really deep in your chest, and then just keep that going and put the baby right on there and just keep doing that, and it'll calm the baby. And lo and behold, like, there you go. And it is, because like that vibration is well-being. Like, our throat itself, when it makes sound, it unlocks well-being within ourselves. That's why like speaking our truth is so freaking powerful and cathartic. Is like you're letting the energy that's stuck in there, you're moving it out through the throat. So singing, any kind of earthing, any of that kind of stuff. Like there's ideas in that video of getting in your body. And the last thing I want to say on Taurus specifically is that that inner peace that Taurus is kind of known for, that highest frequency, is because Taurus is really, really good at handling what's important. And there's a couple different sides to this that I want to break apart. And first is, obviously they're an earth sign, they're a fixed earth sign. So doing what needs to be done, and like, you know, especially when we're talking about taking care of what's valuable to you, they just show up and they do it. They're headstrong, they have good staying power to do things over time. All of that. They're really good at, you know, long-term projects. But the other piece that is even more important, that like all of us have this side of us, is like they have a tendency to simplify in terms of what do you truly need. So Taurus as a side of us is able to tell apart what is actually gold and what is just glittery. You know, there's a very big difference between something that sparkles, but it's not gold. It's actually basically worthless compared to actual gold that has a lot of value to it. So again, kind of going all the way back to the bouncy chicken that I won't eat, I'd rather wait for the real deal to show up than to settle for something that isn't actually valuable. So Taurus just has a really clear perspective of what is truly important. And so while the sun is moving through Taurus, this is a great time to engage with the values exercise that I have up on my blog. Maybe Maddie can grab that link next, where Venus rules Taurus, and Venus as like an action represents our values and deciding and finding what's valuable to us. And so like the sign and the house placement and the aspects and all of that can tell you more about like your unique Venus and what you're likely to find important. But the more we can simplify our values and what's important, is the easier that it will be to take care of what's important. So imagine if you had 100 values and all of these things matter equally. There is only 24 hours in the day. Like Taurus is very aware of how finite time is here in the physical world. Of course, there are other, hola, that's rude. She was already there. Why don't you find yourself a spot and settle in? Yeah, Taurus is very clear that there is only so much time in the physical world in each day. Obviously, there are dimensions outside of time where, like, especially Pisces tends to access these realms where time just doesn't exist, like it's infinite and all of that's great. Not in the physical. And Taurus really, really knows that. So Taurus is like, I don't need 100 values, I need two or three. And then every freaking day, I am going to handle those two values to their fullest potential. And that is where inner peace comes from. It comes from limiting the field of like what actually matters to you. And then every single day, like clockwork, taking care of those most important, critical pieces of your well-being. Because also at its highest frequency, Taurus knows that you can always count on yourself. That's like a fact. Like it's as long as you're alive, you will always have yourself. And so that's where Taurus is a very self-sufficient sign, as opposed to its sister sign is where we like merge with other people, where we can become attached to other people because that Scorpio, it enmeshes its energy with another. Taurus, we are very aware of our own energy and our own ability to take care of our well-being. Yes. Yes. Thank you for being here. Oh, I love this. I love getting to do these astrology live streams because I've never taken like an astrology course or anything, like, or had a formal teacher. I had a life coach who used my natal chart to facilitate life coaching conversations, but even that, she wasn't really teaching me astrology. We were just unlocking each piece to get to more put it into context with like, who am I? What do I want to do on this planet? So I'm all self-taught, and these live streams are giving such a profound structure to my learning. Like it lets me focus in on, you know, what are the 2 transits that I'm going to go super deep into this time. And now, like after covering Taurus a few times, after covering Pisces a few times, I feel like that knowledge has like ingrained itself like down into my being. So I feel like, you know, in the first year of study, like let's say I felt like I learned this much, and in the second year of study, I feel like I'm learning like this much. Like I think the more you learn about astrology, the more you can learn about astrology. Like once you have like the basics down, then you can look at like, you know, a persona chart or a solar arc chart or a synastry chart there's all of these different ways to use this like basic skill set of understanding your own chart and then open you up to like literally the whole world. Um, that actually brings me to another playlist that I wanted Maddie to share. The one from uh, the astrology podcast, I think is what it's called. I'm brand new to listening, like as of this morning, and I am this guy's biggest fan, like new president of his fan club. Just kidding, obviously, but holy shit, like I love depth. I love to know all the things. And I love like circling a lot of topics and then like coming back around to this one that I already know this much about and then learning like this much more. And then like circle again and then come back to it and like now I know this much and then circle again and like now I know this much. So that's like where I feel like I am is in this deepening process. And on that channel, the Astrology podcast, he's got a playlist of videos that is a deep dive into every single planet. And I watched the one on the sun this morning, since we're talking about sun and Taurus. And that was like 2 hours and 15 minutes long, all about the sun. And they didn't even scratch the surface, apparently. Like the books they were pulling out of and the charts they were showing and the concepts they were telling me about. And I was like, I knew maybe like, I don't know, like 25% of what they covered in that session. Most of it was brand new information. And oh my God, is that so freaking satisfying too. All of my Gemini energy is like the more you learn about astrology, the more you can learn about astrology. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, thank you. So that one, with that playlist of the planet deep dives, he also just started, like here just in the last week or so, he started a new playlist where it's like zodiac archetype deep dives. So the one for Aries is already up there, and then he's going to do all 12 of the signs. So in that same process of like, let's spend 2 hours plus and talk about all the different facets. Oh my God, that's my jam. Shay, me too. Sun in the third house, Maddie too. So that actually brings us on over to the sun page, where I wanted to say some of the new pieces that I learned about the sun this morning. So yeah, that's like the best, is all of these different pieces that I get to come on here and then tell you all about, which is my favorite part. Learning obviously happens first and then the speaking. But so the sun is central. This is like kind of the core of this archetype, is that the sun is central. The sun is central in the solar system. Everything orbits around the sun. The sun is central in our energy, like in our birth chart. The sun is the center of our personality, basically. There's a lot more depth and nuance to it than that, but that's essentially what they're getting at. And that it also, the sun determines if you have a day chart or a night chart. And I had heard about day charts, night charts, but the video that they did, the in-depth on the sun, like definitely went into it a whole lot more. And basically it just means like, were you born at night? Like, is it dark outside when you got born? Then you have a night chart. And you can also tell if your sun is in the lower half of your chart. So if your sun falls in houses 1 through 6, then you have a night chart. If your sun is in houses 7 through 12, then you have a day chart. So that's just how the ascendant works, and like the horizon line at the time of your birth. Like that's why that always works out. But anyways, so it's central. It also moves about 1 degree per day. about 1 degree per day because there's only 360 degrees in a circle, and there's 365 degrees in a year. Sorry, 365 days in a year. And that is why your solar return, or like the sun returning to where it was when you were born, can actually happen on your birthday. Like mine is June 19th. So that means my solar return has to happen on June 18th, 19th, or 20th. And it'll be different every year because that's just how it works, as far as like it's not quite perfect as far as 360 versus 365. Also, the moon and the sun, the luminaries. Let me take a sip here. They are the only thing in the sky that's always direct, meaning always direction from our perspective. And there's reasons to this that I don't care. It's more the technical side of astronomy that like it just doesn't ring my bell quite as much. But the sun is always direct. And then I didn't know this, learned it this morning, that the sun's position tells you when all the different planets are going to go retrograde, that their retrograde schedule is, and I knew that for Mercury, and I had never like, extrapolated it out that it made sense. That's what was going on for all the planets. But like, so for Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, it's like when they become trine with the sun. So like, for example, like the sun right now is in, well, let's just take Saturn, better example. So Saturn is in Aquarius, and that is an air sign, and that means that the trine to Aquarius is Gemini. That would be like the air sign that's down here. So that's that relationship. That means that when the sun goes through Gemini, as it approaches that trine with Saturn in Aquarius, which would be about the middle of Gemini, that will be the beginning of Saturn retrograde. I didn't know. I had no idea. So the sun is central. It's determining so many things, which again, like having studied for over a year and a half, coming up on 2 years in August, like again, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface on the symbolism and the deeper understanding and implications of like what all of these energies mean and how they relate to each other. There's just like never ending depth. So just to give like a few bullet points, these come from Stephen Forrest's Book of Fire, where he talks about Leo and the sun. He basically boils the sun down into our evolutionary aim, our core values, our life strategy, the tools we were born with. And I summarized it just based on my overall knowledge as ignoring your sun sign is the fastest way to spiritually stifle yourself. The sun is our life force, our vitality. It literally gives life to this planet, meaning like it allows food to grow. It allows photosynthesis to happen, which is what allows trees to soak up our carbon dioxide and give us back oxygen. Like without the sun, none of us would exist. So it is life-giving. And if you ignore your sun sign, like again, you're separating yourself from your life force, and over time you're allowing yourself to become more oriented towards death than life. So they also talked in that sun episode about the sun and the moon put together, and I've shared an analogy where the rising sign is the car, the sun sign is the driver, and the moon sign is the gas tank. And that fits really well with how they described it a little bit different, is to say like the sun is that ultimate light that's wanting to be expressed. And the moon is how are we actually going to like physically make that happen? And that makes a lot of sense with like, the sun sign is the driver. He or she's deciding, where do I want to go? What direction do I want to point myself? And without gas in the gas tank, you don't go anywhere. You're just sitting in your car, dreaming of places you wish you could go. So again, ignoring the moon sign means that the sun sign can't go anywhere. So you really can't ignore the moon or the sun. But it also gives you kind of an indication, like I've heard people say that they don't really resonate with their sun sign. And a lot of times that's because they have their moon in a very different sign. So one example is like a Pisces sun friend with a Sag moon. And they resonated like way more with their Sagittarius moon and their Leo rising than they did with the Pisces sun. And we're kind of like, nah, I don't want that Pisces sun. And it's like, yeah, but that's the energy that like is your life force, just because you're going to use Sagittarius and Leo to like transport and, you know, provide the fuel to get you there. Pisces is still driving the car. So it really is a process of like getting acquainted with each of your placements in a way that lets you find it within yourself. Because somebody who says that I don't resonate with whatever it is, I think a better way of saying that is I don't know enough about this yet to be able to resonate with it. Saying I don't resonate with is another way of saying I need to keep studying because I can't yet see this within myself. So those are my 2 cents. Obviously, do with it what you will. The sun in Taurus, like we said, is knowing what's valuable. Not all that glitters is gold. No, being able to discern the real value from the fake value, or like the posing value. Like, I don't know, like, again, I have a Taurus rising, Taurus Jupiter, and it never fails that like when I go pick out what I want, like let's say it's an office chair or wallpaper or ice cream, like doesn't even matter. I pick out what I want and then I look at the price tags, and without even meaning to, I have accidentally selected the most expensive option. And that is like the story of my freaking life. That like all the time, like when I let my taste guide the way, it costs money. And Taurus also knows that real value is worth paying for. So again, I don't want to settle for the off-brand ice cream. I'd rather pay twice as much and have the version that I want and eat ice cream half as often. You know, like there's all these different ways that we can be flexible and still allow ourselves to have exactly the version that we want. So while the sun is in Taurus, we have kind of an easier access to a peaceful heart, a simplified perspective. Um, we will most likely be drawn naturally into solitude and time in nature, maybe some extra rest or naps, just lounging in a deck chair in the sun for a few minutes, because that just like melts your whole self and like, oh my gosh, this feels so relaxing. Naturally drawn to what's real. Like, this kind of goes back to getting in your body, but another way to engage with your Taurus energy is to get comfy. So when you think about like getting comfy, you know, probably what comes to mind is like, I'm going to put my hair up, I'm going to take my contacts out, put my glasses on, I'm going to change my clothes, I'm going to take off my fucking bra the second I walk in my door, if I'm even wearing one. Get comfy. And the reason that getting comfy engages your Taurus by default is because you have to listen to your body in order to get comfortable, right? Like to get comfy, I have to like drop in and be like, oh yeah, this bra has got to go, like whatever it is, or these contacts are killing me or whatever. When we're living from inside our brain, we're not paying attention to those physical sensations. So when we deliberately get comfy, so like even if you carved out, like this was your practice, like how can I show up 1% more towards like the change that I want to see? Like perhaps it's I'm going to carve out these 10 minutes to be as comfortable as I can possibly be. And you put on your favorite outfit, like most comfy outfit, you get in your favorite cozy chair, your favorite cozy blanket, you play your favorite soft nice music, and you eat grapes that would just like delicious nectar of the gods. And like that's your 10 minutes. Like it does not have to be something crazy that's super expensive. It really doesn't have to be. Taurus is actually very natural and has very simple pleasures. So it can be your favorite chair and your favorite sweatshirt with your favorite candle burning and some grapes. Like that can be how simple it is. Yeah. Mm. Mhm. Movement, sound. What were they all? Breath, movement, sound, touch. The best healers we'll ever have. So Sun in Taurus is also going to help us to see clear paths to physical security. So like basically heightening our own instincts for what is best for our personal security. And sometimes like that, the lower frequencies of Taurus can get stuck placed because they're being consistent, they're in their comfort zone, all of these things. But at its highest frequency, Taurus is actually able to make change when one, they decide that they want change, and two, the change is supporting, like moving you to another level of security. So a good example of that is when I finished school, I moved to Texas. I moved from Kansas to Texas, to Dallas, and I knew no one in Dallas. I knew no one at my new job. I moved there all by myself, and I cried pretty much the whole 8-hour drive from Kansas to Dallas that last time when I was, like, officially going to, like, live there. I bawled and bawled and bawled and bawled and felt like I left a piece of myself in Manhattan, Kansas is where I was going to school at K-State, and at the same time, I knew without a doubt, there's no way I'm not going. I am going as a fact. And the reason I'm going is I want the income of that job. I want the quality of the apartment that I can afford while I have that job. Like basically at that age, being like 21, whatever, like I was a little bit focused on money, as so many of us are as we start off in our adult life. And this job provided like not just a step up in my own security, but like a quadrupling right off the bat in my own security. So change or no change, I was going. So, like, I cried the whole way there, but I went. So it's like that, Taurus, it's not that they can't change, but they're going to have motives related to security most likely, and that's what causes them to change. It's also time where we will just naturally have a better trust in our guts, like our gut instinct for things, our animal instincts. So while that's heightened for, April 21st through, what was it, April 21st through May 20th, it's naturally heightened because the sun is lighting it up. But this is a good time to like build that relationship with your instinct, follow it and see what happens. And, you know, talk yourself out of it and act against your instinct and see what happens then. And pay attention to which way is better, which way is easier, which way is more pleasurable, which way has better timing, on and on and on. And then hopefully through that exploration of that relationship with your own instincts, you're able to continue at least some of that once the sun is no longer in Taurus, because we do have, the North Node is there for another year or better. Uranus has a few more years in Taurus, but we'll also have Venus and then Mars coming through Taurus here in the next few months. So there will be ongoing Taurus energy to continue practicing listening to our own instincts and paying attention to the results that we get when we act in accordance with our instincts and when we talk and logic our way out of our own instincts. It never works out when you use your logic and that's going against what your gut is saying. Like it will have to fail just to show you that you should have listened to your instincts. So yeah. The shadow side of Taurus, and I always, I tend to play up the positive attributes of any of the archetypes just because I tend to think that the sides that get more often represented in pop astrology tend to be the shadow aspects. Like everybody hates on Taurus because they're stubborn and rigid and boring and like all of that, materialistic. And there can be a lot of things said about Taurus that when you're in your lower frequencies, you can care too much about your own physical comfort and you can sacrifice your values in order to get it. And that is the lower frequency. That is possible. But like overall, we're just going to see our patterns come to the surface. So whether you have patterns of indulging in your own comfort and knowing how to find your inner peace, if you really wanted to, to like use this time to get really acquainted with the path to get there. Like the more times you walk a path, the more worn it is, the easier it is to walk it again. So this month, use this time as like walk the path to inner peace all day, every day. And by the end of the 30 days, like the path to inner peace is really worn down and a lot easier to get to, even once, the sun maybe isn't shining directly on that path anymore. The shadow side of Taurus, the best one-liner I've ever heard to describe it is that basically you can pay too much for your money. That your money, like earning your money, can cost you too much. And that's a thought to like actually sit with, because I put myself back to the software company where, yes, by the end of it I was making six figures, but I literally felt for like the last 4 years of the 5.5 that I worked there, that like when I sat in my desk chair at work, it was like draining my soul out of my body. That was the experience of being at work, was soul draining. And I did it for 4 years because of the paycheck. And I experienced bouts of depression, suicidality, like burnout over and over and over again. And then the deeper stuff quite a bit. And all because I was like, at the end of the day, like I was paying too much for my money. I was selling my inner peace, my health, my happiness for the paycheck, for some numbers to pile up on a screen. And I'm not hating on living that way, because I think when you find yourself more on the materialistic side than on the value side, like how I was like for the software company, there's a reason for that. And the best advice I can ever give to somebody who's still in that phase is to save as much of that money as you possibly can. Because that phase where I lived there for 5.5 years, I quit at the end of 2016. So it's been a little over 5 years since I left. And I'm like, with a little bit of income here and there, like still largely afloat because of the savings that I squirreled away while I was living the 5.5 years of soul draining work. So it's like, at that point, yes, maybe it cost me too much to make that money, but not really, in the sense that it also opened up this avenue to pursue entrepreneurship and my spiritual business and my YouTube channel and all of these different opportunities that definitely were there because I stockpiled as much as I possibly could while I was selling my soul for a paycheck. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing to step into the material world and like make as much money as you possibly can, especially if in true Taurus fashion, you're being strategic about what that money is for, and having that sense of delayed gratification of like, yeah, I mean, I could buy a ton of shoes and purses and cars and vacations and all of that. And I did. I bought a lot of good stuff and had, fun spending my discretion. But at the same time, I was like, but what I really want is to not have to work at this shitty job anymore. Like, I want to work at a place where I feel, passionate and creative and free to express myself, whatever that looks like. Like, that's really what I want. I want that way more than shoes or a new car or anything like that. I want freedom. So, having your values in line, like the values blog post exercise, can help you to, yes, make a lot of money, but delay the gratification towards something that like truly has value in your life. So, Australia is wonderful. New Zealand, I like New Zealand just a little bit better. They're a little nicer there. They're just like, New Zealanders are just very close to nature, I think. Like they spend almost all their time outside. Japan too, especially in Okinawa. Okinawa is supposed to be like the longest living, happiest people live in Okinawa, and like the only thing that is fancy about them is that they spend almost all their time outside, that they go inside to sleep, and that's about it. Otherwise, they're hiking and in the water and doing biking and whatever they're doing. So it's like, yeah, you don't need some like fancy pharmaceutical to help you live longer. You need nature, you need the planet, you need to slow down and smell the roses and enjoy yourself. So all of that I think, again, that little anecdote came from that Brianna Lynn podcast that's on the prep playlist. But next, we are going to talk about Uranus and the North Node, and how the Sun and Mercury are both going to be conjuncting both of them as they move through Taurus. They'll make their passes over each of them in their own turns. So think I'm going to start with the North Node just for fun. I'm going out of order on my pages, but I think that's okay. So the North Node, and this is like super simplified just because we're going to like move through this real quick, the North Node overview, and then Sun conjunct North Node, and then Mercury conjunct North Node. So the this is just a little tidbit fun fact. Like, again, being a newer person to astrology, I don't usually specify when I mention the North Node. I think everybody knows what that is. Like, that is one thing. It's actually not. Like, what I'm talking about is the North Node of the moon, the lunar nodes, because there are nodes for every single planet. And that I did not know until recently, that really, like, we most often are paying attention to the North nodes of the moon as a tie to karma and fate. But really, every single planet would have nodes that can tell you about where you're coming from with that planet and where you're headed with that planet. So the North Node and the South Node of the moon specifically relate to your lunar nature, which, when we go back to that sun conversation, is how you get things done in the physical. So the North Node, South Node represents an evolution where the South Node in your birth chart, especially, this is a little bit easier to understand than when we're talking about the transit, which affects everyone at the same time. But like in your birth chart, the South Node represents the most overdeveloped part of yourself. So the South Node in your chart shows your past life, self, and proficiencies, the skills that you have as a result of that past life experience, and the healing that needs to be done, most likely because as you have so much experience in that archetype, you no doubt dabbled in the shadow frequencies at some point and sowed some seeds of some things that, looking back on it, probably, yeah, I wouldn't do that the same way if I had it to do over. Great, you get to do it over. You're here and you have the South Node in a sign. So that means that that's kind of where you're working on paying back that karma. And a big chunk of how you do that is to lean into your North Node. So yes, it is a process of evolution, but it's not like we want to leave the South Node behind and we're not that anymore. Now I'm the North Node and I'm only this one. Kind of like oppositions, it's about harnessing the best of both of them. It's about bringing them back into balance, because while the South Node is the most over exaggerated part of yourself, the North Node is the least developed part of yourself. So when we have one energy that's really dominant and causing us issues because it's so dominant, like we're getting resistance from other people is one way to know if it's causing you issues. The best thing you can do is come up out of that energy and get in its sister sign. So, for example, my South Node is in Virgo and the sister sign to Virgo is Pisces. So I've found that when I'm all like control freak, all clenched, and I got my plan and I have my clipboard and I'm checking things off and I'm talking to the slackers about they should be working harder and like, don't you have something to do? Do you need me to find you something to do? That there's always something to be. That's Carly, all up in her South Node shit. So when I get like that, people don't like me, like, period. I mean, I feel like I lived there for like the first, I don't know, 26, 27 years of my life. Was like, I was just all Virgo. I was all like, I'm the boss and I'm in charge and I got a list and I know what's going on. I know what needs to happen and I'm going to make you do it because we all need to get this done, which is clearly the shadow side of Virgo. Virgo has its own merit and its own skills and gifts. And so as I've like leaned into my Pisces, which is to say, learning how to go with the flow, learning how to listen to your emotions to tell you, like, when is it the right time to engage and when is it the right time to disengage and to just turn inward and be within yourself and connect to spirit and let the pieces, let them land how they will. Like, I don't care. I don't care what you're doing or who you're doing it with or what the list says we need to be doing today. I'm going to go with the flow, see what unfolds, and we'll live with that. So it's a constant battle back and forth, as it is with any South Node, North Node combination, I would imagine. It's about waking up inside the patterns of our South Node and recognizing that this is me spinning in the over exaggerated part of myself. Like, as a Virgo South Node, I'm never going to get rid of structure. I do love structure. Like, obviously, I have my notes and all of that that helps me to have that structure to move through. But as a Pisces North Node, like, I've made a severe commitment to myself that says, if it's not in my flow, I will not do it. I don't act against my flow. Yes, I use structure as a tool to help in what I want to accomplish, but it doesn't control my life. It's not like, oh, I scheduled this 2 months ago and it's today, so I have to do it. Like, I reschedule shit all the time. Like, I'm sure I am like the worst as far as like my accountant, my financial advisor, like anybody that's making appointments with me, like they just get rescheduled because I'll wake up that day and be like, nope, not today. So I've had this on the calendar for 6 months. I don't care. I'm not feeling it today. So we're not doing it today. And I trust that that's the right time. So it's like a learning progression between the South Node and the North Node. So that's like really in the natal chart on an individual level. When we're talking about the transits, like the North Node is in Taurus right now from January this year to July of next year, that is kind of bringing it up to the collective level and saying, you know, it's not as finite as in a natal chart where like it's a snapshot and you carry that energy your whole entire life. Like the entire collective goes through these 1.5 year long cycles where as a collective we are purging and releasing the shadow side of the South Node and building and growing and cultivating the highest frequencies of the North Node. And like we're going through this cycle 18 months at a time as a collective. So as a collective, you know, even as individuals, we all contain all 12 of the zodiac archetypes. So as the collective right now, we are moving through healing and purging our Scorpio end, harnessing the gifts and talents of Scorpio, but holding them lightly as we mostly focus our way and developing our Taurus side. So if you want more about that, there is a video on my channel about that transit that I'm guessing if you're watching this, you've seen it because like I had like 75 subscribers on my channel before that video. And that video went around and around and around. And, you know, like 1,800 people subscribed to my channel because of that video mostly. So you've probably seen it, but that's one where I recorded it and then obviously I edited it and I've watched it a couple times in the last couple months. And every single time I understand it at a new depth because like the South Node moving through Scorpio since January, it is bringing to the surface like every ounce of your power that you have left scattered out in the world. These little metaphors for you reclaiming your power are manifesting. And I say metaphors because, and I'm going to share this story because I think it's like, I think all of us are probably having something similar go on. So in my past, I ghosted one of my like best friends. We had been friends for a couple of years, and so like not like my whole life or anything, but at one point, I just like, you know, Taurus clarity, like for your own security and survival, like I just knew like this friendship has got to end. And by the time I knew that, I had no energy to say anything to her. And so like the relationship, you know, it brought up a lot in me that wasn't healed yet. And at a certain point, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I had to like step away. And that was a little over a year ago. And just in the last couple months, I like, you know, I made this prediction as far as South Node moving through Scorpio is going to bring kind of like the things out of your closet that like I just left that in there and moved on with my life. I just ghosted her and like had all this guilt and shit and just left it in there and like just moved on with my life. So these things coming back and like I didn't even think when I made that prediction about her, but I also was thinking that like, okay, so in that example, let's say great, that was a piece of my power that like I never felt powerful enough to speak my mind to her and to say like this is my boundary, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's wrong. I just disappeared. And that was definitely out of feeling powerless, and I can see that now. And so my original theory was that, you know, basically that friend was going to come back into my life and that there would be something to work out with that friend, and through that working out with the friend I would reclaim my power. I don't stand by that anymore. I think it's a little bit more loose than that because a couple months ago, I get on a Zoom with a new person and it took me like just a few seconds. I was like, wow, they look so familiar. I never met them. There's no way I've ever met them. Like, why do they look so oh my God. And it was like, they look like my friend. They sound like my friend. The facial expressions look like my friend. The hand movements are like my friend. Like it is, I couldn't not see my friend sitting in front of me. And even like the mannerisms and the energy and some of the same things about my friend that rubbed me the wrong way, like they got it all. And now I'm sitting here on the Zoom with them and I am just like having an out of body experience where I'm like, wow, okay. The first conversation was a little triggering. It was like the whole, like we stay away from that energy. We just put it in the closet and like move on with our lives. Meeting with that person and seeing like, holy shit, like they're the energetic doppelganger of this friend from my past. And dealing with this person brought up all the same issues that I had with this other person. So it's like same shit, different day, different person, but it's me manifesting my own healing into another person who can mirror back to me what it is that I'm still working on. And so this person pushed all the same buttons and all of that. And after I got off with that person, it caused this whole like outpouring of journaling and contemplation and like reflection on what really happened in that friendship and how it ended and the aftermath and like all of that. There was a closure point and at least some of the healing got worked out and released, not because my friend came back, but because some other person that I meet that is the energetic doppelganger of this other person. So I don't think it's as simple as, expect all of these people from your past to revisit you in your present, and especially depending on the relationship. Like if there's value for that person to come back, then they will and you'll work it out with them specifically. But if it's not like that. Like I think, that relationship, it provided the healing, kind of the spark. You need a desire plus resistance. And that's what creates the spark. That's what creates that life force. So this person created or like provided me with a lot of that resistance that helped me spark into finding my voice and being done being so passive until I explode and then it's over and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I want to be better at communicating along the way and problem solving and resolution along the way. So that was born out of that. And that's what I brought into this relationship with this new person, where I'm like, I don't have to be that passive just because like it feels like maybe, they're being more dominant and I'm like naturally like into this more passive role. It doesn't have to be like that. Like I can stand up and like say what I need to say. And if they have an idea and that's not what's going to work for me, I can say, no, it's like this and this is what I want. I don't have to be passive. Like, and it was like that had just never even occurred to me before. So great. Like it it is an evolution, it's a process, and the person who originally caused the disruption in your past may or may not be the person who shows up to help you resolve said disruption, but somebody is. Somebody's coming to help you reclaim that power that you thought you didn't have, but you did the whole time. You just weren't giving yourself credit for it. And the friction, the resistance shows up to help you to like actually stand up and stand up into your power. So that is exactly what this North Node through Taurus is asking for from us, is to reclaim our power in the physical, to embody the full power of our highest self. And again, like that is so exciting to me. So yay. Because the North Node and South Node are an axis. That means that they're in opposition. They're a natural opposition. That means that when we have the Sun conjunct North Node, for example, that is also the Sun opposing the South Node. So that means that these transits, the Sun conjunct North Node and Mercury conjunct North Node, it's both of them all at the same time. It's like the highest good of the planet conjuncting the North Node, which will be an expansion onto your karmic path in a new way, new and elevated, like more power than you've ever possessed in your physical being than before. So exciting. At that same time, the planet opposing the South Node will bring up any limiting beliefs or attachments or patterns or stories of thought that you have in your mind, where basically, like, we are the only one who ever stands in our way. So when we have planets conjunct the North Node, it's like helping us to, like, it's the carrot that is like luring us into this karmic path of like, this is what you came for, like, do it this way, this is great, this is better. And it's also like on the other end, it's like the stick of like, don't do it like that. Like, that's going to get you beat. That's going to create suffering. That's going to, like, when you think I'm not good enough, I don't have the power here, I'm not smart enough, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's that, sun opposite South Node, Mercury opposite South Node. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. Like, it brings up those patterns, mostly from past lives, a little bit in your childhood, where patterns were ingrained, where you started to tell this story of like, this is my value, this is my worth, when really it's like all the way up here. And to manifest like the life that we were truly born for, we have to let our worth rise to the path where, like, this is where your soul came to walk. If you're operating down here where like my worth is 10, then you're manifesting a path for someone who's worth 10 versus like truly you're worth 100. And if you would acknowledge that, you would be on the path for the version of you that acknowledges you're worth 100. We definitely can be unreliable narrators when it comes to our worth. Yeah. And I think, like, depending on what's in your natal chart is kind of like how easy or complex is the path to get to your self-worth, to like unlock that door. Like, for example, if you have second house planets, like, this is what I love about astrology, one of the many things, obviously, but like, so I have my chart ruler, which as a Taurus rising, Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is my chart ruler. And my chart ruler is in the second house, right next to my Mercury. And when I very first started scratching the surface of planets in the second house, it reads like good luck and abundance and wealth and security and, physical luxuries and all of these different things that are like easier because you have these second house planets. You're more likely to manifest these things. And I think that that is true somewhat, but it's more like the journey of self-worth. And when you have second house planets, what that truly means is that you will start at a place of, your worth is 0, like -0, like -10. I mean, that's the journey of a second house planet, is that you will find your self-worth through trial and error, through trying different things and, working it around so that you can discover. And the hurts so bad to not know your worth. Know that you're not worth anything, you're suffering. And out of that suffering naturally will lead you towards like finding your way out of the suffering. It's not a fast process necessarily, but I do think that, like anything else, you get what you put into it. So people with second house planets, by the time you find your self-worth, it is etched in stone. It is guaranteed. It's in your bones. It's not something that you have to remember, I'm worthy, and like affirm it to yourself. Like, I think I'm worthy. I think I'm worthy. No, you are, and your aura exudes worthiness and peace and security, where, like, when you think about true physical security, means I'm not protecting myself. Like, I'm not scared of physical damage. Like, that's true security. And most of us walk through life with a clenched up butthole. Like, we are constantly braced for an attack. And again, like, it's just impossible to feel scared and defensive and worthy all at the same time. So this Taurus energy in general that we're with because we have some slow moving planets there for an extended period, but also the sun coming through over the north node, the Mercury coming through over the north node. Both of those happen once per year. Mercury over the north node is happening April 23rd. And then because Mercury will move on into Gemini and then station retrograde and then move back into Taurus, it doesn't come all the way back to the north node, but it gets within 4 degrees. So the north node's at 22 and Mercury comes back to 26 before it stations direct and like will move back into Gemini for a second time. So not that we'll have this Mercury conjunct North Node conjunction again in June, but on June 3rd, it'll come as close as it's going to be. So a little bit of this energy will kind of come back around there at the beginning of June. Mercury conjunct North Node, though, especially, I see this as delivering a cosmic or karmic message, delivering or receiving for that matter, because Mercury rules listening as well as talking. So, but this message is bringing a boost of empowerment to your voice, especially your verbal communication, and that is going to exude more peace with every word you say, that like vibration of your core essence in your being is exuding the peace that you feel, that you know on the inside. Like one of the things that, I mean, maybe I had been told this before, but I certainly don't remember it. But like since I started posting YouTube videos, people tell me all the time that they like my voice, that like it's easy to listen to, that it whatever they mean by that. But I think that's like very Taurus in nature, as far as like, you know, somebody can have the best ideas ever, the best knowledge ever, the most profound secrets of life. And when you listen to them speak, if their voice sounds like nails on a chalkboard to you, then you can't listen to a single thing they say. You can't give credit to any of the ideas, any of the words that they're choosing, because the tone and the vibration of their voice is unlistenable. So Taurus, I mean, I think there's such a deepness of feeling and knowing that inner peace for yourself, that when you speak, that's what's in your voice, and that like your voice is actually relaxing. Like, I forget which episode this was that I watched. I think it was Achuta Baba in one of his videos about Mercury and Taurus, but he went through like several late night talk show hosts, Clint Eastwood, some other actors that like they don't say a lot, but they don't have to say a lot, because like you can hear so much just in the sound of their voice, that the tone of the vibration of their voice is communicating everything that you would ever need to know. You don't even really have to listen to the words that they're choosing to speak. I really liked this part for the sun conjunct North Node, where specifically like because the sun is opposing the south node, this highlights our patterns of holding ourselves back from shining our light in the world. You can. Like, I think that's part of Maddie and I's conversation. We recorded another episode of Heart to Heart, so that'll be on the channel on Tuesday. I'm super excited to get to watch that again, because that conversation has been incredibly powerful just from having it. Where like we are the creators of our whole world. Like we are essentially God incarnate, each and every one of us. And that is powerful. And it's like, does that make you special, or does that make you the same as everybody else? Those two things are not mutually exclusive, and that the answer is both. That you are extremely special. You are like basically divine in physical form, and so is everyone else. So it's not that like should negate the fact, though, that you are special, and that if your light wasn't needed on this planet at this time, you wouldn't be here. So shine your light. And it's not even so much about like, oh, okay, great, like I need to transcend like every ounce of all the reasons why I don't, but it's like this time where the sun is going to oppose the south node. Expect for how I imagine that's going to play out is like the the desire plus the resistance. Like you will feel like, I want to express this, especially with the sun conjunct the north node, like, oh, I want to shine my light in this new way that I've never done before. Like that's very likely. And then right on the heels of that, like just basically immediately happening, like a split second later, will be the south node end that says, no, you can't. You can't do that because of this and this and this, and you don't have your certification done yet, and you don't even have that degree, and you don't have this that you need, and you don't have this. Like, who do you think you are, like trying to shine that light? Like there's so many people out there that know more things than you do. These are all stories that we can tell ourselves that will stop us dead in our tracks from shining our light in this world. And my own opinion, totally unacceptable to just spin around in those stories and not lean into like pursuing that step outside the comfort zone where you shine your light in a new way. Of course you'll be afraid because all of that stuff over there is like right here, like riding shotgun in your experience. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it anyway. That like really that's like what courage is to be afraid and act anyway. So that is, that's a whole thing. But the fact that I brought up courage puts me back to Mars. Mars represents our courage as far as like an action archetype. Mars is our ability to be afraid and do it anyway. And so I also just released an in-depth video about Mars in Pisces, the transit that's happening. I believe Mars moved to Pisces this morning. So it's like just right there, ingressing into Pisces, and will be there, I think, until May 24th. That sounds right. But I wanted to do this separate video on Mars and Pisces because this is my placement. I have Mars in Pisces in the 12th house, and finding my courage, finding my ability to step up and assert myself and to put myself out there and all of that, it definitely took me a while. But after learning about Mars and Pisces, it all made sense and all of that. But I point you back to that video because as Mars moves through Pisces for these 6 weeks, it's like we have a rush, like a fortifying of our courage by spiritual means. So like Mars and Pisces, our physical vessel is as merged with the divine as it can possibly be. And that we're allowing that divine energy to merge with our physical vessel more than we ever have. That knowing divinity, knowing divine well-being, knowing source energy is all love. That like there's nothing like out there in non-physical that isn't love based. Sometimes we manifest things that feel more like suffering because of where our frequency is, but the universe itself is love. And so when you know that, which by the end of these 6 weeks, we all will know that way more than we do right now, which is very exciting. We'll have that sense of spiritual courage, which only helps to further put yourself out there and shine that light into the world. So that sun conjunct Uranus, no, sun conjunct North node, that's May 13th. So we will have gotten 4 weeks of Mars and Pisces building up our spiritual strength to possibly leap off a cliff if that's the urge that's coming, because at that point we will have a more personal, physical, visceral experience of source energy is always catching us, always. At every turn. When we jump off a cliff, source is right there to catch us. And again, we only ever manifest something different because of our own fear. It's like, if you've ever heard of self-fulfilling prophecy, that's what it is. It's like when you hold fear about something in your vessel, the universe can't help but manifest, reflect it to you. Like, it's like, oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, here's some more of that. Great. So it's courage. Courage is definitely a theme of these next few weeks. And I would say that Mars and Pisces video can help hopefully like open up. Like Pisces is a very receptive sign and very, it's mutable water. So like infinite water. And Mars isn't exactly like thrilled to be in Pisces because there's a lot of surrender involved, and Mars, the warrior, isn't really cool with surrender, except Mars, like the individual self, isn't surrendering to the enemy. You're surrendering to the universe. You're surrendering to be a cooperative component with the well-being that is always dominant and unfolding on this planet. So surrender actually puts you on a higher path of like, allow my physical vessel to align with the well-being that is always unfolding around me. Like my Mars in Pisces, what actually feels like when I really get in my zone is I'm in the perfect place at the perfect time all the time. All the time, getting lucky on having good timing. And when you think about it, it's like everything is here. Everything is physical. And it's just a matter of like, are you in the right place at the right time? Or did you get there 30 seconds late and now the train is gone? And, you know, Abraham says, like, you're never really going to miss your boat. Like the boat that's meant for you, you will always catch. And, you know, the boats, like, they just keep coming. The trains just keep coming. So, like, if you missed one or two, like, this is really not a big deal. But timing, it's not a matter of like, is it going to manifest or not? It's like, am I going to be there when it does? And Pisces Mars is all about surrendering to the timing of what's already unfolding. And basically, kind of the bottom line of all of that is like, all of that being said, if you get an urge to expand and to, you know, the sun, like shine your light, or Mercury, like say a message that normally you wouldn't do that, like that's kind of out of character, but it's coming through you so organically, like I can't help but want to express this, then do, you know? And even though there may be some fears riding shotgun, like still do it, because this North Node process in the conjunction is aligning you with your highest path, and really the highest path of the entire collective, what's already unfolding, just a matter of whether or not we're there or not. So trusting. And that's going to continue on as we flip into now looking at Uranus, because Uranus is the great awakener. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and the 11th house. And really, like, some of the keywords are electrifying, breaking loose from what's holding you back, willing to break social norms and the status quo, very inventive and original. Uranus also has an 84-year orbit, which sounds long. A very fast-moving planet. It just happens to be really far away from the sun, which is why it takes like such a long orbit, but it's really fast-moving. Uranus is said to be the higher octave of Mercury. So like Mercury is our everyday mind that kind of gets us from point A to point B, that, like, you know, orders our coffee at the coffee shop, and, you know, whatever little micro interactions we need to be successful during our day. That's Mercury and our mind, our ability to focus. And then Uranus is like flashes of genius, flashes of an idea that, like, "Ah, I have to do this. Like, I can't not do this." And when the idea comes, like when that Uranian opening in your brain happens through like the perfect circumstances, which inner peace only helps with, the more we're able to cultivate peace inside ourselves. Basically, what it does is quiet Mercury and lets you hear Uranus. And Uranus is the higher mind. It's the one that is still connected to your own higher self and still knows, like the Uranus placement in your still knows the individual soul that you were coming forward, and like the whole reason that you were coming forward. And Uranus is basically like oh, I was gonna say like manager or minder, or like somebody who is constantly like at your shoulder. And when you dawdle in places that like aren't your own individual self, Uranus comes and like pulls you out of that place. And again, it can come through sudden changes, like losing your job, or like your spouse leaves you, or something like that, where again, you were hanging out in places where this is not your highest self. So Uranus will break you free. Uranus will burn down structure so you can't stay there anymore. They'll smoke you out and get you to go over here, which it may still not be your fullest individual highest self, but it will be at least the next level opportunity to move a little bit more in that direction. So the main focus of Uranus is that it wants your soul to fully self-actualize. And self-actualize, if you're familiar, is the top layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So like on the very base of the the pyramid is our physical safety. And then we have physiological needs, and then we have emotional needs. And I forget what that fourth one is, maybe social needs or something like that. And then the top one is self-actualization. So imagine, like, if you're running through the woods because you have a bear chasing you, you're basically at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You are in survival mode. And while you are in survival mode, you cannot self-actualize. You have to come up out of survival mode to like get comfortable and meet your physiological needs. And once you've done that, then you get to come up again and start to think about your emotional needs, which would bring your life satisfaction to like the next level. And then you get to think about these top next needs, which I do think are social. Somebody wants to look that up. What is that layer between emotional and self-actualization? But anyways, once you've met like all of these basis of needs, the top layer is to self-actualize. And so like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is scientific based and not at all talking about astrology, but basically Uranus is wanting you to self-actualize. Uranus wants you to like, yes, meet whatever needs you need to meet in the physical and emotional and like do what you got to do. But like at the end of the day, can we at least be walking in the direction of like who your individual soul was born to be? And again, going back to Taurus, like, you know, even though you may not rush into change, you do still have to be thinking about how do I optimize my experience? How do I make it even better? How do I be even more of my true self? Otherwise, that's when the universe can come along and kind of push you off of those cliffs when you've been dragging your feet and refusing to jump. I do want to comment on this real quick. So Shay says, Mars in its fall in Cancer, the energy is frustrated there. Warrior Mars just doesn't know how to be in emotional Cancer. So obviously my Mars is not in Cancer, it's in Pisces, but I have spent a lot of time thinking about basically just that like I feel a little bit, and this was more before I learned, you know, how beautiful Mars and Pisces really is. But like early on, I felt like a bird where I had intentionally cut off my own wings. Like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? Like, why would I hide those abilities from myself? Why would I take my fire, my spark of life, and dunk it underwater? Why? Why would I do that? You can see some Pisces Mars victim mentality coming out a little bit there, but it's like everybody's natal chart is exactly perfect. The exact way that you meant for it to be, that's what it is. And so as I looked at like, okay, yes, my Mars is in Pisces, so that means like my self-assertion and my, you know, boldness and my courage and all of that kind of inaccessible to me, like not really familiar territory necessarily. And when I looked at like the rest of my chart and like what every single pocket was like charting that this is what I came forward to do, it made so much more sense why I would basically take the volume on my Mars, on my warrior and my courage and my boldness and my self-assertion, and I turned it down to like 1. So like you have Mars and Aries, the volume's at 100. Your warrior is on, he is out there, he is bursting forth with his little attacks and like he's doing it all the time. He's aggressive and he's fighting, and he's probably fighting just to fight, just because it's fun. So that is like the opposite of Pisces Mars. I turned my volume knob down to 1. Same with Cancer Mars, is like you turn the volume down to like 4 or 5. And why would you do that? Why would you do that? Like, that's a really good question to sit with. And obviously your answer may be very different from mine, but I think I did that on purpose because for one thing, it gives me a depth of compassion for people struggling to use their voice. Like, it took my ability to assert myself and like made it somewhat disconnected from me, especially where I'm a Pisces North node. So like Pisces is the least developed aspect of my personality, and that's where my Mars is. So I felt like it was hidden for the first 30 years of my life. And I think I did that because of the depth of compassion that it gives me, because when I get mad or go to assert myself, which are kind of anger and, power and all of that kind of wrapped up in that Mars archetype. That flame, that fire is Aries, has to go through the levels of water to come out the other side. And so it's like when I express myself or when I'm uncomfortable or upset, unless I'm like losing my fucking mind, which has definitely happened, but like most of the time, what comes out on the surface is not going to burn anybody. Like it's like I took the fire and I distilled it into this glass of water, which had the essence of the fire, and then gave the person the glass of water. I didn't blow flames in their face. So I think there's like an interpersonal ability there. There's also these like inspired movements. Like when you put your Mars in a water sign, basically your motions and your body are interconnected with your energy, like your emotions and your sensing of energy, like Mars being more your physical senses side, like your body and that sort of thing, and water being your energetic or psychic senses. So now you have both of those put together. And my, again, my sense of energy is extremely strong. I don't like crowds. I'm extremely sensitive to energy. So it's like your whole body, like the physical vessel itself, becomes porous and allows energy to come in when you have your Mars in a water sign. So again, I think there's like an added level of empathy and compassion because you can literally feel others, not just in your emotional system, but like physically in your body, which I don't know if this is, you guys should tell me, I should have put this in the Pisces Mars video, but I have synesthesia, which all by itself just means that you have two of your senses, like two of your five senses are crosswired. So like Ed Sheeran, for example, he, when he hears music, he sees color. So he has said that like when he's writing a song, when he's composing a song, it feels less like he's making music and more like he's painting a picture. So he's like, this is me putting the yellow on the canvas, and then I add in this layer to the song, and that's me putting the red on the canvas, and then I add this layer to the song, and that's the purple on the canvas, and I just put a little bit, this little purple. So yeah, oh, that's so cool. So yeah, you guys, let me know, especially if you have a water Mars, if you have synesthesia or whatever your Mars is and you have synesthesia. But there's like 160, this was the last time I looked too, which was a long time ago, but like 160 different ways that synesthesia can manifest. And I would imagine that it's more like however many people have synesthesia, that's how many different ways it can manifest. Because the one I found that was closest to mine is mirror touch synesthesia, which basically means that like if there's a person standing in front of me and now a third person walks up to that person and like touches their arm, like rubs your hand down their arm, like I can feel like their touch. And it's not that extreme most of the time. The times when it is extreme is when it's like an intense touch. So either sexual will like cause my entire body to flush because it feels like someone is like sexualizing me, which is definitely interesting for like watching TVs and movies, especially as a child. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. It was very confusing. And what was I going to say? Oh, and pain. So when I see somebody get hurt, and again, this goes for real life, movies, TV, it doesn't matter. When I see somebody get hurt, it causes pain to erupt out of my knees and travel up my thigh and down my calf. And like it just radiates out of my knees. And one time, the pain was so intense of the person, it was the sound that they made in addition to seeing them injured, and the pain erupted out of my knees and my elbows and like traveled all over me, and it almost made me throw up. It like made me nauseous how bad it hurt, and it was their pain. Nothing happened to me. Nobody touched me, and I'm like suffering miserably over this person having like a bunch of books dropped on their foot, and then somebody else being like, get out of the way, come on, we gotta go. And like I'm like, he's hurt, stop. Oh my god. Like added layer of empathy. Like almost literally feel other people's pain. And while I wouldn't necessarily like wish for anybody to have that, I also don't think I would give it away. I don't think I would change it if I could that happens to me, because I do think like I know because of that, the interconnectedness of my experience with every other person on the planet. Like their pain is literally my pain, which is kind of true for any empath. I mean, I think in a more empathic sense, we feel their pain emotionally. In a synesthesia sense, basically my sight is cross-wired with my physical touch. So when I see somebody else being hurt, I feel pain myself. And it's interesting because I have noticed, like, on a movie or something, like if I know an injury is coming and I close my eyes, I can still hear the impact or whatever it is, and it doesn't cause that. So like I know my hearing isn't wired to my physical touch, but I know my sight is wired to my physical touch. So that's synesthesia, and you can have any combination of all five. Like people taste sound and they smell colors and all kinds of shit. You should totally look it up if you've never heard of it. Yeah, synesthesia can be hell to master. It's like, that's what I'm saying. Like my youngest memory of this experience was maybe like 4 or 5 years old, and I was sitting at my grandma's table, and I was like moving my legs like under the table, like being kind of restless, and I accidentally kicked her in her knee, which she had had like knee replacement surgery, and like it was so painful for her still, and like always tender around that knee, and I kicked it. And the look on her face, like I just instantly started bawling. And again, I felt nauseous because it hurt me so much to know that like not only was she in pain, but I caused it. Like, oh my God, like take my breath away. And she's then like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, why are you? No, it's okay. I'm okay. And I'm like, it hurts. It hurts. And it's like, she's like, no, it's okay. See, I'm okay. And I'm like, no, it hurts. And arguing with her because she's trying to tell me that she's not hurting to get me to calm down. And I'm telling her, I know how bad it hurts because I can feel it. And that's why I'm crying, because I'm hurting. So again, it's like, I can't, like, it's physically impossible for me to ever choose to like hurt someone on purpose, because I'm hurting myself in the meantime, like in the process. So again, it's like, why would you do that to yourself? It's an added layer of compassion. It's an added layer of like knowing personally the interconnectedness of all things, all life. So I personally think that's beautiful, but you know, every single person with synesthesia is going to have to like have their own experience. I have learned that it mostly runs in families. So like it's kind of genetic, that if you have a particular type of synesthesia, most likely there's people in your immediate family or like your grandparents or something like that that have it as well. And when I was in my mid 20s and I learned what synesthesia was and all of that, like I had no idea that everybody didn't feel that way. That like I thought everybody had pain that shot out of their knees when they watched people get hurt. And that's why I couldn't understand, like, how do people like boxing? How do people like UFC fighting? How do people like football? Like, how do people like this? I don't understand. It hurts me to watch these things. So I don't get why there's millions of fans for these like so painful and violent sports. I just don't understand. But I didn't know that this was even a thing, because it's just normal. It's just the way you are. And so it was very interesting because like I was visiting to my grandma's house and all three of my brothers were there and we were having lunch, and somebody was talking about pain, because that can happen too, where somebody's telling me a story and then I get a mental image of what happened to them, or like they show me a bruise from an injury that they had and all of a sudden it's doing the same thing because I'm imagining the pain that they had. And so somebody was telling a story about pain and I was like, stop it, you're hurting my knees. And Ross was like, what? Or no. First it was Jake and Sam who were like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Ross is like, yeah, it was hurting my knees. Like, knees. And me and Ross is my younger brother right below me. And then my grandma, who's my mom's mom. My mom doesn't have it. My dad doesn't have it. And Jake and Sam don't even know what the fuck we're talking about. So yeah, that was really interesting. And Grandma and Ross didn't know that that's not something that everybody experiences. Like most synesthetes, they think that that's just normal and how it works, unless it's like super exaggerated, um, depending on what kind you have. So Uranus was where all of that started. I think the easiest way that I've thought about Uranus, and obviously this kind of discounts all that's there, but basically it's our real self versus our conditioned self. So when we're born, we are a blank slate of our real self. And as we grow up and we deal with our parents and our siblings and the people in our neighborhood and whoever's there in our childhood, especially those first 7 years of life, they condition us heavily by basically either explicitly like telling us verbally, like, hey, do this, don't do this, or they implicitly teach us things. Like if you have an abusive alcoholic parent, you learn real quick to recognize when they're drunk so that you can behave accordingly and hopefully avoid their wrath. So that kind of implicit conditioning can happen as well. So all of that conditioning happens in the first 7 years of life. So it's like by the time you even know what's going on, the conditioning has already happened. So like one way that I saw this put is like, okay, so there's the real you, and then there's the trained monkey in your brain and your nervous system that exists inside of you. So the first step to deconditioning is to acknowledge that the trained monkey exists. So if you can't acknowledge that there's a trained monkey inside of you who's like pulling levers and saying things like just based on your programming, your conditioning that you got when you got here, if you can't acknowledge the trained monkey, you can't get him to go away. You can't pull yourself back into your real self. So acknowledging our conditioning, I think it begins with our self-talk, with like being a little bit more self-aware to like, what are the patterns and the stories that you tell all the time? Like one example, this guy that I used to work with, every day, all day long, it's like, this person didn't do this, and this person didn't do that, and I'm pissed off because this is late, and this didn't happen, and this was planned, and it got messed up, and like everything was just always wrong. And that, to me, is a sign of like basically the conditioning that that person soaked up in childhood is one where you complain instead of fix it, basically, where like voicing your frustrations and venting was normal. So like rather than addressing the problem and like let's come up with a solution so that this doesn't happen again, I'm just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and see if I can like feel better by telling you my story, and now you agree with me that yeah, that person shouldn't have done that, or that plan, yeah, it should have happened better. Like it shouldn't have been off plan or whatever. Like you think somebody agreeing is going to tell you that like that's the way you should feel, even though it never does feel better. So our conditioning, like mine, for example, is hard work. Like that was kind of the religion, if you will, that I grew up with, is hard work is what it takes, that, being a hard worker is the best identity you can ever have, on and on and on, that like rest makes you lazy, you can sleep when you're dead. These kinds of what I would call toxic mentalities are what I was raised with. And so I definitely absorbed them, like, especially the first, you know, until my late 20s. And even a little bit after that, like, I still am very much a recovering workaholic where I get so much of my sense of self worth and am I a good person? Am I valuable? It's like a lot intertwined with how hard am I working? What's my output? How productive am I being? How many things did I cross off my to-do list today? Like all of these things, instead of like, I'm worthy just because I'm alive. Like I'm worthy because I'm here. And that's all it is. Like that's kind of the Taurus symbol version. Um, but when we're conditioned by our parents and our upbringing, we're taught that like all of these other hoops exist to where you got to jump through this one and then this one, and then you go to college, and then you get a job, and then you get promoted, and then you buy a house. And like all of that's conditioning. Like that entire culture of like educate yourself, make something of yourself, like that is conditioning. Like that is not our soul organically giving rise to like whatever feels natural and normal for us to do. Most of us are operating out of our conditioning, out of our trained monkey selves. And so Uranus like we said, has our back and is going to push us out of situations where we're spending too much time and this isn't who we really are. This is our conditioning leading the way and telling us that this is the right path. And eventually along that path, there will be a stopping point orchestrated by the universe, like you getting fired or something like that, that's aiming to push you back towards your Uranus path, your true individual self. That's why like the beginning of the midlife crisis is early 40s, mid 40s, where that's our Uranus opposition. Has an 84-year orbit, so that means when we're 44 thereabouts, we go through our Uranus opposition, which means that Uranus is in the sign opposite of when you were born, and it's like that mile marker that says, like, are you doing it? Are you being your individual self, or have you built a life based on your conditioning? Because if you built a life based on your conditioning and doing what you thought you should do and selecting this work because you thought your mother would respect you more, or I mean, these are examples from clients, but like if that's how you built your life is by trying to live up to the conditioning that you were taught, in your mid 40s, it will burn to the ground. It has to. That Uranus opposition comes in and strips away everything that does not fit with your authentic self. So lots of people go through midlife crises, and the worse the midlife crises just means like that's how far off base you were to begin with. So depending on what side of the midlife crises you're on, like if you're the one having it and you can feel that I just need to break free, I just need to breathe and like go where I feel like I can breathe, versus if you're the one getting left behind, like in a marriage situation, like it feels like this person's having a midlife crisis and going crazy, actually maybe a little bit going crazy, but mostly just shedding everything that's not authentic to who they really are. And at that point, you got to be happy for somebody going through a midlife crisis and at least finally getting a taste of like who they were born to be. Like you can't blame anybody for wanting to be who they were born to be. That's kind of why we're all here. The highest frequency of Uranus is an altruistic humanitarian, which means you found your own self and implicitly grant that same permission to every person you meet. So that freedom and independence to be your real self, it begins by you claiming it. And then the fact that you claimed it, everybody who ever meets you will claim theirs a little bit more because that's what's unlocked in your vibration and they'll get to sample it just by meeting you. So becoming our true self is really like the best service that we could ever provide to the planet. So when the sun conjuncts Uranus, this is really interesting. This one's happening on May 5th. Because it's interesting because the sun rules Leo and is associated with the 5th house, and Uranus rules Aquarius, which is its sister sign. So like naturally they're in relationship as opposites. And that means that when they come together in the conjunction, some keywords: highly innovative, spontaneous desires, radical self-actualization and expression, total freedom, emboldened self, lose insight and self-awareness, which sounds like a negative, and I'll give you that maybe a little bit it is. But at the same time, like you lose those things because you are so organically being who you are that you don't need to be self-aware. Like a dog who's got his nose on a trail and he's sniffing and hunting and everything else, like he's not self-aware, he's just going with who he is. Like it's just in his flow. So it's like that. Like, yeah, maybe you don't need insight and self-awareness when your soul is what's flowing and driving the boat. It's also a very uncompromising energy, bursts of expressing rise of your soul self without hindrance, highly independent energy. If you have this in your natal chart, for example, you will thrive on your own. And even under this conjunction, the sun moves about 1 degree per day. So that means like maybe 6 or 7 days we'll feel this conjunction where it's going to be perfect and at its most potent on May 5th. So a few days on either side of that. You may do best to not necessarily talk to a bunch of other people about what you want to do, but just go do it. Just go get yourself some solitude and do whatever is flowing inside of you. There's nothing to convince anybody of. little respect for authority, at least the traditional kind of authority, and that there's just this knowing in your bones that you have the right to be who you are. Sun conjunct Uranus, like it'll either you're already all up in your eccentric self, and this is probably going to attract to you new people who appreciate and love the light that you are shining. And at the same time, like if you're more in your programming and your trained monkey self, most likely this is going to manifest as this pure desire to burst free. And as you do that, it'll be the desire plus the resistance. So you'll want to burst free. And then here's your current relationship partner who's like, no, you can't make a YouTube video because then other people might see you and they might like you. And then you'll leave me and you'll be with them. So no, you can't express yourself. Nope, nope, no, you can't do that. And it's like, I want to, and then here's this limitation that exists in my current life. And if I had to guess, I would imagine that your authentic self is going to win in that situation in early May. The sun conjuncting Uranus is like a firecracker of your real self bursting free. This happens once a year to our entire collective. So, it's not like your whole life is going to burn down or anything, but expect to have either a boost of your authentic self, if that's like already what you're living, and more people showing up to encourage you and shine their light into you and all these great things, versus if you're more on the shadow side of Uranus in your conditioning, more what you're probably going to shine the light on are the limitations that are keeping your real self from being able to actualize, if that makes sense. And then Mercury conjuncting Uranus, this one's happening on April 18th, so just on Monday. Some keywords. So like we said, Mercury is the lower mind, Uranus is the higher mind. So they're both mental energy. They both, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Virgo's its feminine face, but Uranus rules Aquarius. So Mercury and Uranus both associated with air signs. Keywords for this conjunction: electric, intense, combustible, anything new, novel, or changing is very good for this energy. Innovative insights that you've never thought of before. Because this is happening in Taurus, again, the more peaceful you can like find inside yourself, the more peace you can cultivate inside yourself, the quieter Mercury is and the louder Uranus will be when we have this Mercury-Uranus conjunction. Mercury moves quite a bit faster than the sun, so this conjunction is only more like 3 or 4 days versus the week-long conjunction with the sun. Ooh, I love this part. Rewriting and realigning your story of who you are. That like, again, so many of us tell stories about who we are and what we're worth and what we're capable of. And, like we will only ever manifest our life to the extent that, what we believe is possible. So if you believe you're worthless, like I used to, then everything that you manifest in your life reflects that back to you. And if you want a life that reflects good things to you, we have to find that inside of ourselves first. And so much of that can be done inside our journal, both through a gratitude practice where we're shifting our focus onto what's working for us instead of what's not working, and also journaling out like your thoughts and your stories and all of that, just so you can get the story of yourself. I find it really valuable and helpful to see it on paper and read back through it on paper, because then you have a little bit of detachment, a little bit of space between this is the story I always tell, and it feels so natural and normal when I move it through my system, but I don't read it ever, right? So when I write it down and then I read it either out loud or just in my head, you see it more from an outsider's perspective than you did before. So at that point, it's like, maybe I don't want to tell the story if I'm worthless. Maybe I want to say it more like, or I want to, open up my mind to be like, my worth isn't as high as I wish it was, but it's getting higher all the time. That's another way of saying I'm worthless. I'm worthless is finite. It's the end. There's a period at the end of that sentence and you are stuck right where you are, versus I am finding my worthiness more and more day by day. Like that's the same story in a completely different format that allows for growth and evolution in your worthiness, for you to find that new territory. So Mercury and Uranus, the two parts of our mind coming together, I would imagine like our self-talk and our story is just that much more in our awareness. And it's a good time to note if there are repeat stories that you're telling that like do not serve you. Because if that's what it is, then find a different way to tell it. Find like spin it, like I said, I binge watched the Scandal series and the main character is a fixer. She's like the queen of spin. No matter what happens, she can say it in a way that makes it sound like a good thing. And that's the skill that's required. It's like spin your own story. Find a way to tell it that feels good to you when you tell it. And that is manifesting more good things into your life. If you're telling a story that doesn't feel good, then it's only bringing more things that don't feel good. So this is a great opportunity for that. As far as trying to talk to other people goes, Mercury conjunct Uranus gives a very erratic speech, mostly because Mercury conjunct Uranus is a very fast moving mental energy. So think about how fast your thoughts move compared to your spoken word. And it's like erratic speech because basically your words can't keep up with how fast your thoughts are moving, which I definitely resonate with that on a normal basis. So I'm definitely excited to see like on Monday if it's even worse than before or whatever. But it very much works in bursts. So like Mercury is definitely a lot more consistent than Uranus. Uranus happens in bursts. It's like an explosion of authenticity that's quick and then it passes, but the results of that explosion, they last and they take time to unfold, and the implications of yes, okay, on the inside, I'm now a truer version of myself who I was born to be. But obviously, that takes time to sort it out in the physical. So we don't need Uranian bursts of authenticity all day, every day, because dealing with the aftermath of those bursts will take up all the time in between. So, because this is happening in Taurus, and Taurus is slow and resistant to change, prioritizes stability and security, um, that this again, like we will likely see things that maybe we want to change. And at the same time, we could very well feel resistant to change. And that's where I go back to all of this gets to happen in your time. Like it doesn't have to be like, okay, today I've realized this. So how do I 100% change over my entire life? It's like, how can I be 1% more my real self rather than living according to my conditioning or whatever that is. And even if that's just, normally I'm with my partner every single evening and we do our whole routine together. Maybe it's like one evening a week, I'm going to have my alone time just so I can like further ground into who am I? Who was I born to be? And like that may make sense in your situation. If you have a whole bunch of planets in Libra and like North Node in Libra and all that, more alone time is probably not the answer, right? Because like relationships is kind of the point of your whole being, but you got to look at your own chart to see exactly what the remedy is there. But I do think Mercury conjunct Uranus is going to give us a new self perception of like, how can we better align ourselves with our own individuality? And even if we're not going to make all those changes all at once, that, it still needs to happen over time. I also watched this video, this is on the LiveStream prep playlist, where it was two people who have this conjunction, Mercury conjunct Uranus, in their natal charts, which I found very fascinating as far as them talking about what is it like to live with this energy all the time. So that's obviously a little bit different than the transit. But it's like Mercury conjunct Uranus makes your nervous system on high alert. It is very fast electric energy. And there was a girl and a guy making the video, and the girl said that basically coffee is like a recreational drug. Like caffeine hits her system like ecstasy. She didn't say that. She said recreational drug. But that makes a lot of sense that like when your energy is already moving really fast and then you introduce something like caffeine, which only makes it move faster, like neither of them drink caffeine on any kind of a regular basis. So that's something I say mostly to keep in mind, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, notice, like instead of just being in the habit of, well, I always drink, 2 cups of coffee or I always have whatever, like maybe one cup of coffee does the trick. Maybe no cups of coffee are necessary. Maybe you bounce out of bed Monday morning and you're like ready to be alive and ready to face the day. And coffee is the furthest thing from your mind because you got all the energy you could ever dream of. So yeah, that was definitely really interesting thinking about how all that electricity of Mercury and Uranus actually affects our physical vessel and our nervous system. So yeah, that is all I have for today. This is all this Taurus, all of these planets moving through Taurus is, I think the main bottom line is connecting to our body, getting out of our head and down into our body, relaxing our vessel, releasing any of the tenseness where we're tensing and protecting ourselves, allowing those tensions to subside, doing and engaging anything that we can to calm ourselves. So if that's taking a walk in the evening or having a bath or having your favorite dinner or playing some nice music that's really like your vibration in a sound in a song, whatever it is that allows your body to calm and puts your defenses down will serve you immensely in this next 30 days and really even on as we have Venus and Mars moving through Taurus later on here in a couple months. So that getting in your body, breath, sound, movement, touch, breath, sound, movement, touch, breath, sound, movement, touch, every day, breath, sound, movement, touch. And even if it's not all day, every day, where you're living in the divine presence of like the deliciousness of getting to be physical and alive, at least carving out a minute or two at the minimum up to, however often you can to have these little pockets of, even having like a little mindfulness meditation as I walk to the bathroom. That's one of my favorite examples is like, instead of walking to the bathroom, thinking about what am I going to do after I get done using the bathroom, or what am I going to do later, or what sounds good for lunch, or like all the number of things that can take up your awareness and your attention. And all of a sudden, like you're in the bathroom, go and pee, and you don't even remember how you got there. So I try when I go to the bathroom to have the added bodily sensation of needing to use the bathroom. So that helps pull you into your body. But two, just like feel your hips and feel your calf muscles and your feet as they move through the steps, and how are your arms doing? Go in and out and make those 15 seconds of walking to the bathroom, make it this little mindful 15 seconds. It doesn't have to be like sitting in meditation for 2 hours straight. It can be like finding 15 minutes 15 seconds 6 times a day, and you're 1% ahead of where you were yesterday. So setting your sights low as far as like start where you are and do what you can. It's like that ladder metaphor where if the top rung is all the way up there and out of reach, you're just never even going to do it, never even going to try. Versus like if you can find a rung that's down here where you can actually step up onto it, now you can climb that ladder. So that very low rung is be mindful of your steps and your body for the 10 seconds that you walk to the bathroom, or extend it even a little bit further. And I'm going to tell you that like one of the most pleasurable things that your body can do is urinate, which sounds really weird, but it's like when your bladder needs to go to the bathroom, the relief that you feel in that release is one of the greatest pleasures our body can ever experience. So like think, how many times a day do you go pee? And every single one of those could be a pocket of mindfully enjoying the simple pleasures of getting to be alive. Obviously, I'm a girl. I've had lots of UTIs, bladder infections, like whatever. It's not always the most pleasurable thing, but if you're healthy, literally, there's so many little opportunities in our life where we can come into our body and be grateful to be physical and to be alive. So this Taurus season is so perfect for that, so perfect for practicing it, and then taking the fruits of that practice, the new skills and pathways that we've carved out for ourselves. Hopefully some of that sticks around then when we move on into Gemini season, which is very different from Taurus. Holy moly, they could not be more different, just like Taurus and Aries. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I thank you so much for you guys who catch the live version. out with me and put things in the chat and talk to. It fills my heart with joy to see when you guys say nice things to each other. So thank you for all of that. And if you catch the replay future at some point, thank you for hanging out with us for a little while energetically in the dimension that exists outside of time. Hello, welcome to that dimension if you're in the future. I think that's all. I think that's all I got. I do have to go to the bathroom, so my body is calling me. So I'm going to go take care of that. And you guys all have a great rest of your day, a great weekend. Watch the channel on Monday for that look ahead at the energy of this next week. And I'll be back for another live stream next Friday. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye now. Okay, bye-bye.